चन्द्रसुन्दरमुखम् ताम्रारविन्देक्षणम् भक्ताभीष्टवराभयप्रदकरम् कौपीनमात्रोज्ज्वलम् स्वात्मानन्दरसानुभूतिविवशम् सर्वानवद्याङ्गकम् श्रीमन्तं श्रीरमणेश्वरं गुरुवरं योगासनाध्यासितं ध्यायेत् श्रीरमणेश्वरम् ध्यायेत् श्रीरमणेश्वरम् ध्यायेत् श्रीरमणेश्वरम् हृदयकुहरमध्ये केवलं ब्रह्ममात्रम् यहमहमिति साक्षात् आत्मरूपेण भाति हृदि विषमनसा स्वं चिन्वतामज्जताव पवनचलनरोधात् आत्मनिष्ठो भवत्वम्. Commence today's self-inquiry session by listening to Bhagavan's Upadesham. We have been reading from this book, Ramana Answers, Self-Inquiry 1900 to 1950, a compilation of Bhagavan's answers on Atma Vichara, self-inquiry, between 1900 to 1950. By our founder president Sri A.R. Natarajan ji. Today we will look at the question number 4, which is a continued question to the master about the inquiry. In the earlier verses, Bhagavan had said that wherever there is body, there is misery, and therefore one would not be able to experience eternal bliss which is devoid of misery. In that series of questions and answers, today the question being put by the devotee is, when one inquires into the root of ego, which is of the form I, all sorts of different thoughts without number seems to rise, but none can exist apart from the I thought, which is a question most of us feel related, that when we start doing the vichara, it seems as though more thoughts seems to rise. However, the devotee here, he has at least identified that none of them exists apart from the I thought. To which Bhagavan is answering, whether the nominative case, which is the first case, appears or not, the sentences in which the other cases appear have as their basis the first case. Similarly, all the thoughts that appear in the heart have as their basis the egoity, which is the first mental mode, I. The cognition of the form, I am the body, when it rises, It is the cause and source of the rise of all other thoughts. Therefore, if the root of the illusory tree of bondage is destroyed, all other thoughts will perish completely like an uprooted tree. Whatever thoughts arise as obstacles to one's spiritual discipline, the mind should not be allowed to go in their direction, but should be made to rest in oneself. One should remain as witness to whatever happens, adopting the attitude, and A.R. Natarajanji has put this part of the text in italics, which I will read. Let whatever strange things happen, happen. Let us see. This should be one's practice. In other words, one should not identify oneself with appearances. One should never relinquish oneself. This is the proper means for destruction of the mind, which is of the nature of seeing the body as self, and which is the cause of all the aforesaid obstacles. This method, which easily destroys ego, deserves to be called devotion, meditation, yoga, and knowledge, because God remains of the nature of the self, shining as high in the heart. Because the scriptures declare that thought itself is bondage, the best discipline is to stay quiescent without ever forgetting Him, the God or the self. After resolving in Him, the mind which is of the form of the I thought, no matter by what means, this is the conclusive teaching of the scripture. I read the last part. After resolving in Him, the mind which is of the form of the I thought, no matter by what means, this is the conclusive teaching of the scriptures. Bhagavan is very clearly telling what the scriptures or what is self-inquiry expects out of us. It is whenever there is a thought, there is an identification with the body, and then there is a seeming feeling that one has perished or one has been going in the wrong direction or one has got into many obstacles. Therefore, by no means of any intellectual thinking or by no means of additional thoughts, these obstacles can be set aside other than attending to the self or the God, whichever we want to say as it is, or the Guru, which is the source of the I. By only identifying oneself with the self, one can make sure that one transcends all these obstacles and remains at the source. So remaining at the source, as we have been seeing from the last three to four questions, is the only way, and the only way to remove all the obstacles, including the thoughts which rise right now, which may be in many numbers, including the I thought, because the self doesn't even say I. Neither does the body. This is what Akkad has been speaking about. Neither the body says I, nor the self says I. And there in between is this phantom entity, the egoity, which links the self, the conscious part of the self, to the body and makes it appear as though one is the body. And this egoity starts with the first person I, like I woke up. It starts with that. It is the first person which rises. Therefore, we should recognize that from that first person, everything is only thoughts. And moment we grasp that as me, if we grasp that thought as the I thought or any other thought and identify ourselves with that, then we end up in a series of obstacles. So we should diligently inquire to whom is this thought. Then we see the I, it is for me. Therefore, we should further inquire, who am I? To see the source of the I, that which is the basis of the I, which is the self or the God, which is totally thought free here and now, which is just the light in which the whole movie is being played. Whether the movie is full of ignorance or whether the movie is full of knowledge, without discriminating, it simply shines, simply reveals that awareness, that existence is our real nature. So by repeatedly getting established in that self, Bhagavan says we can get rid of this obstacle, and that is what is the teaching of all the scriptures. With the immense grace of Master, for the next 15 minutes, no matter how many thoughts rise in us, and no matter what is the quality of the thoughts that rise within us, we should diligently inquire to whom is this. And it reveals that this is for me. Thereupon, we should inquire, who am I? What do I refer to as I? Or what is the source of this I? When we diligently inquire like this, the attention which was outward turned on the thought gets turned to the self. And by repeated practice, Bhagavan assures that one will gain enough strength to just remain at the source. And either one gains the strength by repeatedly practicing, or one inquires to whom is this thought? Whether one is on the top of the hill by already having reached there, or one went by puts the effort and reaches there, both are equal, having reached the top. So Bhagavan says, if moment a thought is there, it is an opportunity to inquire and to reach that top and stay there. So we should use thoughts, if at all if they rise, as an opportunity to see that we have moved from the self, we seemingly seem to have moved from the self and re-establish back as in our own self, which alone can remove all the obstacles. With immense grace of Master, let's do Atma Vichara for the next 15 minutes. Ramana.
Namo Ramana.
Thank you, Akka. Over to Akka.
Namo Ramana. Prostrations to Ramana, who shines as the self in all beings. By the immense grace of Bhagavan, who is the very embodiment of the self, Ramana, whose name also means that which is dear to everyone, which means nothing other than the self. For the self alone is dear to all. Annilai ellarkum oppam, says Bhagavan in Ulladu Narpadu. So that self, embodied as Ramana, out of immense grace, to crystallize for us the path to self-knowledge, which has come down from the ages, but to make it as simple as possible. In case we should lose it, thinking that it is difficult. But Bhagavan says, how can it be difficult? What is simpler than the self? What is more evident than the self? Asks Bhagavan. Many of us think that Atma Vichara is something abstract, self-knowledge is something abstract, it is not concrete. Who says it is not concrete? It is the mind which says it is not concrete. The mind which is ever used to grasping things only through the senses. Such a mind says, self, that is very abstract. No, not for me. Self-inquiry, that is difficult. That's what the mind says. So Bhagavan asks, is it possible that anyone is there in this world who is not aware of his or her own existence? Can any one of us ever declare, I don't exist? If we were to so declare, we have to exist in the first place to declare, I don't exist. So our own existence is always evident to us. It is not something that we lose at any point of time. And there is also the continuous consciousness, I am. Because if I were not conscious I am, then that existence would be as good as not existing. Because we say something is jada. What is the meaning of something being jada? That something being jada means it is not self-conscious. It is not aware of its own existence. Whereas they are all aware of our own existence. So Bhagavan says in Upadesha Saram, Sattaya hi chit, chittaya yaham. Sat and chit are not two different attributes. They are the same Vastu. When he speaks of Spurana also, he says it shines as awareness. What is that shining? What is that light? In an earlier session, Dilip pointed out that light of the self is not a physical light, it is not a gross light, it is a light of consciousness. It is a light of awareness. Can any one of us deny that we are aware of our own existence? They cannot deny it. And that never changes, no matter what else changes, no matter whether our existence is connected with a waking body, or it is connected with a dream body, or it appears to be connected with no experience at all in deep sleep. Nonetheless, the existence never changes. And what about awareness of existence? Do we not have awareness of existence in deep sleep? We do. Because again, as in one of our satsangs, it came up the point, we are able to say, after we wake up, I slept well. We are not in a position to say, I think I ceased to exist because I was not aware of my existence. I do not know what happened. I say, nothing was there in that space, but I was happy. I certainly existed in that space. So there is no point of time when we are not aware of our own existence. Bhagavan says, what then is the difficulty in self-knowledge? He says, in fact, even the word self-realization is not a correct phrase or a term because the self does not become real. It is not realized. It is always real. It is the only thing that is real. In fact, on the basis of the knowledge of the self, everything else is known. Because I know my thoughts. Because I know my sense experiences. Because I know my dream experiences, my sleep experiences, my waking experiences. Because I know that I have a body. I recognize the existence of a body because I am. As Bhagavan says in Upadesha, in Ullathu 40, Jadamudal Naan ennadu. It is not the body which is saying I am. Something is saying I am, and that something is saying I am this body. When it says I am this body, it limits itself to a particular identity, and therefore it forgets its own limitless nature. So the problem, if at all there is a problem in self-awareness, is the problem of wrong identification. It is not a problem of not knowing. The self is ever known. The self ever is, as it is always of the form of knowledge, and nothing more concrete than this, nothing more direct than this. Why do these scriptures say the self cannot be described or we cannot understand it with the mind? Because it does not need to be understood by the mind. It is so self-evident. It does not require a mind to know it. So why do we need a mind? When we say it cannot be understood by the mind, it cannot be reached by words, it cannot be described by words, we think, oh, it cannot be reached by words, it cannot be reached by the mind. That means I do not know it. Not at all. The very one who says, I do not know it, I cannot reach it with the mind, he is the I, and that is never unknown. So the problem is not that the self is unknown, the problem is not that the self is abstract, but the problem is that we have identified the self with a limited entity. So what needs to be tackled is ignorance. What needs to be addressed is wrong knowledge, which is called avidya, which could be it is wrongly thinking that one is this body, mind, etc., connected with the body or manifesting itself as a body, enjoying things, imagining that it's a body. That entity, that wrong illusion has to be addressed. Or in another way, if you look at it, the forgetfulness of our true nature. Amnesia, as we thought of in one of the previous classes, in one of the previous sharings, We thought of it as amnesia. So it is a forgetfulness of our true nature, and it is a linking of our existence with a wrong identity. So how to tackle this is what Bhagavan is giving us a very direct, simple clue through self-inquiry. So one part is self is not abstract. Self is not difficult. That's why Bhagavan says, Ayye ati sulabam. Kayyamalahakani Poyya odiyum. Atmajnanayalito sulabhayenu saralavu. ಆತ್ಮವು ಅತಿ ದುರ್ಬಲನಿಗೂ ಸತ್ಯವಾದುದೋ ನೋಡೆ ಕೈಯಲ್ಲಿಯ ನೆಲ್ಲಿಕಾಯ ಮಿಥ್ಯವಾದುದೋ. Bhagavan says even a gooseberry in one's palm, ಕೈಯಲ್ಲಿ ನೆಲ್ಲಿಕನಿ, is a phrase which is so evident, as if it's a gooseberry in one's palm. So evident, something so evident. Even that is very much a falsity and compared to the reality of the self. Why? Bhagavan says that in order to know that there is a gooseberry in one's palm, one has to have a palm, there has to be a gooseberry, one has to have knowledge that this is a gooseberry, this is a palm, one has to have sensation in the palm to feel the gooseberry in the palm, one has to have eyesight, and one has to have a brain that is functional and linking all this. And one has to have the mind which is paying attention to all this. The gooseberry will be sitting in the palm, sensation may be there, eyes may be looking at the gooseberry, brain may be functioning properly. But if my mind is thinking of something else, the gooseberry in the palm is not existent at that point of time. It is Poyya. It is avidya. It is not there because it is not there as a reality to me at that particular moment. But even if I forget everything else in the world, wherever my attention may be wavering, can I ever lose awareness of my own existence? It is impossible. That is why it is called grace, because it can never go away. It never goes away. That's why Bhagavan says grace is in the beginning, grace is in the middle, grace is in the end. It is always there because it can never go away. It is. Therefore, what we find difficult is the problem of removing wrong identity. Now, is that something very difficult? Is the path very difficult? How can we say the path is difficult? Because Bhagavan gives us a path again, which is not abstract, which is very concrete, which can be described in detail and which can be described with reference to our own daily experiences. Can any one of us deny that we think of ourselves as a body? That is where we start. And Bhagavan says, okay, if you are thinking of yourself as a body, where does this sense of body rest? Is it in the body? Is it in this physical waking body? He is asking us to look at our own experience. It is not something outside that he is pointing to. He is actually revealing what we have not paid attention. That's all. All he is doing is drawing attention to our own experiences. And when we look at the body, we say, yes, this body is changing. It's constantly changing. Any which way we look at it, the awareness of the body is not in the body. The awareness of the body is in my mind. We can realize it. It's not a difficult thing for us to realize. A simple example, as I said, when we are sitting somewhere, if our attention is elsewhere, we are not physically there. Don't we all know this? Is it a difficult thing for us to understand that attention wanders? When attention wanders, we are not physically where we should be. Is it a difficult thing for us to understand that though the external situation may be good, bad, indifferent, depending on how our mental state is, the external situation looks very, very different. We may be in an externally comfortable situation, but if the mind is sad, then the external situation feels sad. We may be externally in a difficult situation, but if the mind feels happy, then externally there is no sorrow. When we were young, there was a book called Linda Goodman. It was Sun Science, a book called Sun Science, where the different characters of people were described, and as teenagers, young people, youth. We were somehow interested. That was one of the popular books of those days. In that book, she would say, these are the characteristics of a person. These are the characteristics of somebody born under the sign of Aries, somebody born under the sign of Taurus, Cancer, Gemini, etc. Okay. In that, there is a very beautiful thing she says about an Aries woman. She says, if you go and tell an Aries woman, there's going to be this horrible period in your life. If you go and tell it to her, then she's at the peak of the horrible period. You tell her, there's this, according to the horoscopes and according to the stars, there's this horrible period in your life. She will look at you and say, is that so? When is this supposed to happen? That's what she will say. There is another very favorite description which I like, favorite of mine, that is, there's a question. Okay. A pessimist, if there is a cloud, we say, there's always a silver lining to every cloud. Every dark cloud has a silver lining. This is a good side to even difficult things in life. So that question goes like this. A pessimist looks only at the dark part of the cloud, does not see the silver lining at all. Okay. What does a philosopher do? A philosopher sees the dark part of the cloud and the silver lining. A philosopher says, life will have ups and downs, life will have good and bad. And what does an optimist do? When we ask this question, most of the people, even I would have answered, the optimist sees only the silver lining. No, says the joke or the riddle. The optimist doesn't see the cloud at all because the optimist is walking on the cloud. So when we are on the cloud, no matter what difficulties are there in life, they don't touch us. So where are the difficulties? Where is the world? This is the question which Nanda Kumarji was taking up in the verse of Ulla Dinalapada. The entire world is in the mind and this body is in the mind. Everything for us is in the mind. This does not take us long to discover if only we pay attention to our own life. A little attention is enough. So there is nothing abstract about understanding that everything is happening for us in our mind. It is modifying the way we look at the world, the way every experience for us is in the mind. So Bhagavan then says, okay, now you have the biggest key, the greatest clue. Since your happiness, your sorrow, everything happens in your mind, understand this mind. How to understand this mind? Will somebody from outside come and tell us about our mind? Can they tell us anything? The best they can do is try watching your own mind, says Bhagavan. And out of his kindness, he also tells us, if we watch, what will we find over there? Lest we get lost anywhere. It doesn't give us this even least bit of room to get lost anywhere. So he says, okay, you have started looking at your own mind. What do you find in your own mind? You find thoughts. Many, many thoughts, maybe. Thoughts. Is there anything other than thoughts? If we keep on looking at our mind, All we have to do is keep practicing, keep trying to observe. If we want to know our true nature, all we have to do is observe ourselves. Observe that which will reveal our true nature by removing that which is hiding our true nature. What is hiding our true nature? Our identity. This body, thought is in the mind. So to unravel the mind, we have to get to its core, which is the body thought. This I am the body thought is not evident to us. It is constantly hiding behind various thoughts. I think I am feeling happy. I am feeling happy is Sharada feeling happy, but I get lost in my happiness. I think I'm feeling depressed, I'm feeling sad. That is Sharada feeling depressed and sad, but I guess get lost in the depression, in the sorrow. If I'm feeling like any desire, I get lost in that desire. If I'm in any action, I get lost in the thought of that action. Can we not understand it? That our mind is like this, that each and every thought is an objective experience. It is a thought, it is a thought. But because we are so strongly conditioned, we are so much caught up in this habit, we find it difficult. Otherwise, there is no difficulty in recognizing that this is a thought, this is an experience which has come, this experience is right there, right now. It is there for me because I am attached to it. I am hiding behind the experience. And how do I reveal myself to myself? By saying, oh, don't hide behind this experience. Ask, recognize, this is an experience. This is a thought. This is not I. This is my thought. How do I remind myself about it? By asking, says Bhagavan, for who is the thought? And I ask myself, I will suddenly remember this thought is for me. It is my thought. It is not me. It is my thought. Then who am I in this experience? Who am I in this experience? When I start asking myself this, the veil, the hiding, which is constantly happening, the attention, the external attention which is constantly happening, gets cut at that point. It gets cut by that question, who am I? And when it gets cut at that moment, our own nature, which is so clear, which is so simple, simply reveals itself. What happens again? Due to habit, due to the tendency of thinking that everything lies outside, all joy lies outside, again another thought arises, again another object is pursued, again I hide behind one more thought, experience. All I have to do is to repeat the same process until it becomes experientially clear that the joy is not out there, it is my own nature. Then that hidden aspect, this too Dilip would often share in our sharings, Satyam Chit are always there. Ananda is lost because of this identification. So the Ananda is regained in the fullness of the Sat and Chit. When Sat and Chit get delimited from the identity, from the elusive identity, one is back in one's own true nature, which is Satchidananda, which is the fullness. All misery is because of limitation. And nothing, as Bhagavan says, nothing could be simpler than this. The difficulty is not in the self, there is no abstractness, no difficulty in being self aware. The difficulty is not in understanding the path to get back. The difficulty is in our resistance to do so. Difficulty is in our resistance to accept that all answers lie there. That difficulty we have to overcome. We have to overcome our own resistance. Bhagavan is there helping us to do so, moment by moment by moment. Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramana.
अपारसच्चित् सुखभाविराशे यस्योर्मिमात्रं भुवनं समस्तम् गुहाहितं तं रमणं गभीरम् चिन्ताविहीनं हृदि चिन्तयामि चिन्ताविहीनं हृदि चिन्तयामि नमो रमणा
Namo Ramana to everyone. Thank you to everyone.